Hey, welcome to Moody Reads. This is part 2 of my discussion about figuring out my sexuality and gender. This second part is just like a Q&A from the questions that I was asked on Instagram, but if you want full context, you should probably watch part 1. I can't tell you what to do. I'm not your parent. But that is available. And if you watch this and have any other questions, feel free to comment down below, as long as it's respectful. So, now I'm going to get into the Q&A portion of the video. People on Instagram asked me questions about being gay, and I'm gonna answer them. And I got a lot of good questions. I think some of them I probably explained. We're gonna go through them. I've obviously read them. I wrote them down, but, you know, I wrote them in order of when I received them. So, these first ones deal heavily with gender. How did you come to the realization you were non-binary? I think I explained that. The egg cracking moment. But like beyond that, it was a lot of like talking about it and like asking myself really how I felt. And with the moment that I had, it was really about just like asking myself like what does gender feel like? What do I feel like in relationship to you know, the idea of womanhood, being called a girl, being gendered, you know, that sort of thing. And then from there, like when I was actually getting into like what labels fit me best, literally trying them on, thinking whether like you're talking to somebody or like feeling it out. Yeah, that was kind of my process. The next question was, what does being non-binary mean to you in terms of gender identity and presentation and the way you want to be perceived in the world? I kind of gave a small explanation of what being non-binary was to me towards the beginning, but the question of presentation kind of goes beyond that. So being non-binary to me, it's not being a man or a woman, not like putting myself in either of those just feels so fake and bizarre to me. It's like trying to wear shoes that don't fit. It just doesn't make sense. But in terms of presentation and the way that I want to be perceived, that's something that kind of has, like, I've been trying to figure it out, and it has been, like, developing. I guess presentation-wise, my ideal gender expression is being someone that you look at and you can't tell if they're a butch lesbian or a twink gay man. That's my desired gender expression. Although, I don't feel like a gay man, certainly. And also, well, obviously the label woman doesn't work, but the word butch, it feels like it has a masculine connotation to me, so that doesn't even really fit either. Presentation, confusing, but gay. The way that I want to be, and that's like the way that I would want to be perceived. Not that I like want to be confusing, like in like the queer like questioning of gender sort of way, like, yeah, people should be confused. People should be confused by the concept of gender, though. Like, if I can make somebody ask, like, what the fuck even all of this means, like, that's great. That's just a bonus. But honestly, I don't necessarily need the confusion, especially because I don't like confrontation. I just don't want people to perceive me in a gendered way. I just wish they wouldn't. I wish that they would simply accept the fact that I am neither and address me as such and stop fucking calling me ma'am. That's the ideal, but in the world that we live in, confused is going to be the closest, and that's fine. So far as like the specific clothes that I wear, I do think that is something that I'm constantly like figuring out. Especially because, like, where's the line between, like, clothes that are aesthetically pleasing to me versus clothes that I'm actually comfortable in? That's a really big question, and why I have so many damn dresses in my closet. You know, the last time I wore a dress in public, maybe once in 2018 or 2019, there were like one or two dresses that I was comfortable in. It's been a while. We'll just say that. But I would like to really like understand, just to know, like, I always have something in the back of my head that's like, well, what if I change my mind and like want to look a certain way occasionally? And like, well, yeah, what if I can't have 5 closets worth of clothes just based off of what ifs. So, next question. How have you navigated being non-binary? While many of our labels are binary or imply an equal attraction. And that was not confusing, but that was an issue for a while, certainly, especially with the label lesbian specifically. I was never really averse to the term gay. Like, at first, like, when I was 21, newly coming out, I don't think that I ever, like, called myself gay, but, like, after being in the community a little while, like, I referred to myself as gay, even if I was, like, talking about myself as a pansexual person, at the time. But, like, the term gay was not a problem to me, especially because, like, by the time I was, like, really, like, I knew that I was non-binary, even when I was dating the last guy that I dated, I didn't see my attraction to him as straight. That was not a straight relationship. Nothing about any of that was heterosexual. So even before I, like, figured out that I didn't like men, I was kind of thinking of myself in terms of, like, gay, because, like, I was non-binary, like, all of it's gay, it's just all queer, I don't know. The word lesbian I did have more trouble with, but I think the trouble that I had with that came partly due to a lot of internalized shit from when I was a kid. Like I said, I was, like, thought policing myself at 11. When I was a teenager, the idea of looking too closely at a Victoria's Secret made me uncomfortable. Like, I had a guy friend who made fun of me because I was, like, really embarrassed to be near or go into Victoria's Secret. And it wasn't because I was, like, with guy friends and we were looking at bras. Like, I don't think that even really crossed my mind, but it was like, there are half-naked ladies on the wall. What if I accidentally look at them? Like, so the word lesbian felt scary and seemed to be, like, a very specific kind of person. And then, like, once I got, like, into the community, there's also a lot of discourse about, like, people not wanting, like, non-binary lesbians. And as someone who is, like, a scholar, a queer sociology scholar, I've looked into the history. I know that gender non-conforming lesbians are as old as lesbians, but I was still concerned. The biggest piece was really the fact that it took me so long to figure out if I was gay. I felt like I couldn't use the word lesbian because, like, I've spent the majority of my adult life dating a man. So I kind of felt like I couldn't use the word lesbian because I had been with them. And because, like, again, like, I'm not, like I could have sex with a man and I could enjoy it. But that's not the same as sexual attraction. It just isn't. And I've kind of gotten to the point in general where I'm starting to give way less of a shit about what people think of me. All of that is tied to, like, discourse bullshit and people trying to gatekeep, and that is simply nonsense. So, I got tired of nonsense. And I'm kind of okay with, like, the queerness of it. Like, some people are confused with, like, you're not a woman, so how can you be a lesbian? Like, dude, I'm just vibing, and the vibes are very homosexual. Please leave me alone. Okay, so next question. Not to center men, but how did you realize you weren't actually interested in men? Especially if you like the idea of masculinity or men and relationships between them, but you don't want that for yourself. Now this, I already answered half the question with the entire video. However, I thought that the part of the question that I found really interesting was where they said that for them, that they like the idea of masculinity or men and relationships between them. I find that particularly interesting because that was my experience for sure. I mentioned being intensely afraid of the possibility of being attracted to women, but I really latched on to queer men. As a high schooler, there was the idea of the gay BFF, which was kind of cool, but then when I started to really get into online fandom spaces, very much into MM ships and gay characters. And I think that I latched on so much to some of these characters, to the point where they were the main focus. Oh my god, am I really gonna go into ships? I won't go into all that, but I was just very enamored with certain characters, and I mean that's when I was mentioning closet cosplay, a lot of the people I closet cosplayed were men who I envisioned in queer relationships. And I think that's because that I really identified with that queerness, even if I couldn't take the extra step to fully place where I was in context of queerness. So it was kind of a safe entry point, if that makes sense. As well as a piece of that being an actual a gendery thing, and I've had to basically just think critically about what I'm feeling and what I actually want. So it's a shitload of self-reflection, which is what all this is really. Next question I have: would you be comfortable discussing the difference between your experience and that of binary lesbians? And that is really interesting, and I think would also take a lot of time. So we're going to try to answer this and not go on forever. Okay, this is probably the 500th time I've tried to answer this question. I had to refilm it because my original footage, I did answer the question, but it was a little bit confusing because my brain was working, so I was reiterating stuff, and it was messy. Basically, the short answer to this is that there is not one binary lesbian experience. So I can't compare my one singular person's experience to a group of very diverse people who all have different experiences. I will say that one thing that popped into my head that might be different than most binary cis lesbian experiences would be the way that gender dysphoria has impacted my experience. It's made it more difficult to figure out my sexuality because of how integral dissociation is to my experience of gender dysphoria. So having, dissociation problems in general is going to complicate things. But the fact that my gender dysphoria further separated me from my body just made it all that much harder to really figure out what I even liked. And that's not something that I imagine most binary, gender-conforming cis lesbians have had to deal with. And on top of that, I think that my gender dysphoria or my transness or non-binariness in general, I think also impacted the way that I interacted with men to a certain point, particularly due to confusion between wanting to look like someone versus being attracted to them and figuring that out. I think most binary lesbians probably don't have that problem at least binary, gender-conforming cis lesbians. So that's kind of the main answer that I could come to. That's not to say that there are no differences between my experience as a whole and their experience as a whole. I just think that our experience of lesbianism is not that different. So far as like attraction goes. Our experience of gender might be different. And there are ways that that can interplay with sexuality some, but on the whole, I don't think that there is stuff that's as different. Something that I did realize, though, while trying to answer this question is that, you know, there is something that has made me feel disconnected from other people's, like, lesbian experience. But the thing that has made the most difference is when they figured it out. So people who have, like, known that they were lesbian since they were a kid, or even, like, people who came out in high school, I don't resonate with their experience all that much because that wasn't my experience, which is the whole reason that I made this in the first place. It was so hard for me to figure out my sexuality because it didn't seem like there was anyone with my same experience. And to kind of illustrate that point, I could talk about a couple of coming out videos that heavily resonated with me. Both of them were by binary lesbians. One is cis and one is trans. And what they say about that experience kind of resonated with me in different ways. I have attempted to talk about this without rambling and have been largely unsuccessful. And I don't really want to keep you any longer than I already have with the rest of this video. So if you're interested, and if you want me to elaborate on it later, just let me know. There are some of these questions that I'm kind of skipping, but only because I've already addressed them. So if you don't hear your question, that might be why. The next question, it says, I'm struggling with reckoning with past relationships with men because I was attracted to those people. You? This is a hard question to answer without going into a lot of specifics about people who probably don't want that much information about them online. But this is a really hard one to answer. And I think it kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier with figuring out, for me, not for every single person certainly, for me, my attraction to men, what I thought was attraction wasn't. And that sounds really shitty, and it feels kind of shitty because I had genuine connections with those guys. It's not like I faked the whole relationship. I cared about them, and we did have really intense connections. But at the end of the day, it wasn't genuine romantic or sexual attraction. It was inherently different. I could not feel for them what they felt for me, and ultimately I couldn't live the life that they wanted to live with me. And that was true of the guy that I knew wanted to get married and the guy that I knew never wanted to get married. So it wasn't just that. So my experience might be different than yours. I have heard from some people who are lesbians that, they were attracted to men. And that was that time of their life. I'll put the TikTok username of the person I'm thinking of, who is a non-binary lesbian, like one of the few non-binary lesbians that's about my age. I don't like that this looks like I have ears. That's been talking about their experiences. And I've really connected and found really interesting their discussion of, like, gender and sexuality, and their discussion of compulsory heterosexuality, which I haven't really brought up the term, but that's what I was getting at with, like, talking about, like, the way that things are structured. The term compulsory heterosexuality is complicated because it originally meant something else, and I don't have time to unpack all of the discourse. It's a helpful word for me. But I also realize people's issues with it. Regardless, I will put their TikTok down below because maybe some of what they experienced could be resonant with you. Next question. How did you start questioning your gender? Where do you go to learn more? I explained how I started questioning my gender because I started thinking about it. And I was in the middle of just so much information, like Tumblr, but also like real life people. I was in the queer community, seeing people with different experiences. So, surrounding yourself with a queer community, surrounding yourself with people of different experiences, learning about different people's experiences, and seeing what you vibe with. That's kind of what I did. Just learning as much as possible. Then, what is your experience with gender euphoria? And I love this question. I wonder if I can think of the first big time that I felt gender euphoria. Definitely when I was like, I can think of different like euphoric moments when I was first starting to mess with my presentation before I was out as non-binary, or before I was questioning myself as non-binary at all, when I was just like thinking like, oh, it's an aesthetic thing. For a while, big plaid shirts, and I still love a good flannel. I look gay as fucking flannel is just gay. At the time, I would not wear this now because I feel way less comfortable in it, but I would wear oversized flannel with like floral leggings and like a t-shirt, and like the floral leggings with the big flannel, like those two, like kind of grunge with the floral, like that kind of clash was really great to me. When I first started really embracing like button-ups, especially patterned button-ups. Now, peak Euphoria is like a wonderful patterned button-up, which you could probably tell if you watch my videos. I wear a fair amount of them. Now that it's summer, I have so many short sleeve patterned shirts. Recently, I've just like naturally, whatever that means, found myself like tucking literally every shirt in, like all of them, like t-shirts. The shirt that I'm wearing now, I am at home doing fucking nothing. I have my t-shirt tucked in because it just feels weird. I don't know. Like when you're like a kid and like some adults like tuck your shirt in because it looks professional. Like, no, I will tuck my shirt in because I want to, even though you don't need to tuck t-shirts in, because I look gay as fuck. I can't explain it. It just is. I don't know. There are a lot of nice little details that have given me gender euphoria before, and things have changed. What I'm comfortable with my expression has changed. I used to get a lot of joy out of like dark lipstick, like black lipsticks, and now it is few and far between that I can stomach that. Mostly, just because I am less separated from my face. Like, especially before I got my nose ring, before I got glasses, which I didn't actually need glasses until a couple years ago. My relationship with makeup has always been very contentious, like even like as a child. Or teenager, I guess. Still a child. But there were times when I was able to do makeup in a way that I felt gave me agency, and that gave me a lot of euphoria. I don't often get to that point. The only thing I used to do dark lipstick a lot. Not really my thing anymore. Occasionally though, a good like smudged, think My Chemical Romance guy liner. That can really do it. But I have to be kind of in the right headspace, because if I feel like other parts of me look too feminine, that stuff can make me feel awful. So it's a real big hit or miss. But when it hits, it hits. Oh, and another unexpected piece of gender euphoria is tall shoes. Like, high-heeled shoes, I've never really vibed with that much. I do have a pair of kind of chunky heels that I do like to wear sometimes. However, I know that other people are going to perceive them as super feminine, and that makes me feel bad. But I have a pair of combat style boots that are unfortunately falling apart, but they make me a good inch or so taller. I fucking love that shit. Like, I didn't expect that I would like it because I don't feel particularly short. I don't have any dysphoria around how tall I am. But give me some shoes that make me tall, and it's real good. It's real good. So yeah, those are some small incoherent pieces on things that have brought me gender euphoria. I feel like I'm rambling, but that's the point of this video. So it's fine. Next question. How and where does one start getting answers when questioning their gender identity? And that's a real good question, and that's totally going to depend on where you are as a person. Like, what have you asked yourself? What have you tried? It's going to be very individual, honestly. Like I kind of mentioned before, going out and finding diverse experiences that are similar to yours, experiences that you might not think are similar to yours. Just learn as much as you can and, like, ask yourself questions like, how does this stuff make you feel? Have an honest conversation with yourself. That's really the best place to start. Are you actually reflecting, or are you holding on to other people's expectations? That's the point that you really need to start at when questioning anything, not just gender or sexuality, but like, if you like where you are in life, should you take the new job? Like, you need to start at a base level by asking yourself where you're at and how you're feeling and being honest. And that can be so fucking hard. It seems obvious, but it's really not. The next comment says, I'd like to hear more about being non-binary. I haven't heard many people talk about it. If you've gotten to this point in the video, I think I've answered that. But, again, like I just said, like, go out and find a lot of, like, try to listen to as many people as possible. Try to seek out different perspectives, because there are non-binary people out here talking about being non-binary. You just have to find them. I have, within the past, I think I downloaded TikTok near the end of last year. I have found so many fucking queer people. If I had that in 2013, I would have been light years ahead. Light years ahead. If you're on the right side of TikTok, which that all depends on the videos that you look at, there are so many people in so many intersections that are queer as fuck. It honestly gives me fucking life. I can, like, feel myself starting to tear up, but, like, coming from a place where, like, I grew up with, like, no queer representation. The first character that I read in a book that was gay was the gay BFF in the House of Night series when I was probably, like, a junior in high school, or maybe a sophomore. I don't fucking remember. So it was hard, but it's honestly, there are so many people now that are actually talking about it. There's a wealth of information on TikTok. There are plenty of YouTubers. I can put the links to some of my favorites, but I have been out of the bulk of the LGBT YouTubes for a while, so I don't really know where a lot of people stand in a lot of places. The only person I consistently watch is Elena Joy, and she's cis. She's a cis lesbian. But I can put down a couple of my faves that I know talk about being non-binary, but neither of them have made videos recently. Ash Hardell is incredible, and you should watch their backlog of videos. If you're questioning, their ABCs of LGBT stuff is spot on. They also have, like, some stuff on sex positivity, body positivity. he has so many cute videos with his partner. They are honestly, like, the two of them are relationship goals. And honestly, you want to talk about, like, another time I should have realized I was not interested in men. So the idea of being married to a man, or like when I was with the guy that I was with for like a decade, like the idea of marriage, like he'd like asked some stuff about it before, and I just felt like the inside of me just like seized up, and I was like, oh, wait until after college, and then like proceeded to like not think about it because it was like kind of horrifying in a way that I didn't want to admit. But when I saw them, like I want that. I want what they have. Their marriage, their like announcement that they wanted to try to start having kids. Literally, it's so cute. But that has nothing to... Well, it has everything to do with being non-binary. They are a non-binary couple. You want to look and see what people's experience being non-binary. Go watch that. Just full to the brim with joy. Not gonna cry. Another person that I really liked watching, who's made a couple of videos about being non-binary, but really talks about it more on their Twitter, is Lux Manning. I may link their channel down below, but I really don't know if they're coming back to YouTube at all. They do a lot of Twitch streaming, though, and it is the most wholesome, low-key Twitch stream. Like, I don't really watch Twitch that much, but they're one of the few people that I check into sometimes, and it's always a wholesome time. They're just such a wholesome person. So those are the people that I would recommend, because they're just super sweet. But if I think about some other things or come across other videos, I might make a playlist or something. Somebody asked, fun unrelated question, what's the story behind your username? Who is Mooney? And for that, I might direct you to my first video. I haven't watched it in a while, so I don't really know what I say. But I definitely talk about that. The reason that I initially picked it was mostly because I didn't want my name on this. Like, I was trying out another name, actually, with some friends that I didn't end up going with. And I still don't know my feelings around my name. And so I really didn't want to have to like rebrand everything if I like changed my name, or if I was like trying out names and the other ones were like giving me dysphoria. So I needed something that was not attached to my name. I ended up coming up with something based on a ship. I absolutely do not support the person who wrote the original texts, but that person also didn't support that ship. So, not only is she a shitty person, but she doesn't enjoy my happiness, even in terms of the people that she lets be gay. So, even though it, like, originally came from a disambiguation of something fandom related, I think it's taken on kind of a life of its own. It just is my book-ish space. And it's honestly kind of nice when people call me, like, it doesn't happen very often, and it happened more in the beginning, but when people would, like, call me Mooney instead of Beck, just, I don't know, it was cute. It's cute, and it made me feel nice, especially when I am having, like, weird feels around my name. It's nice to have, like, a little nickname. I don't know. Yeah. That was an interesting question, and I think it's kind of funny. And it's also technically tangentially related, since a little bit came from my insecurities around, names, which is adjacent to gender. Then, the final question is actually book related. Can you recommend some books to help you that helped you come to terms with your gender, sexuality, or that you feel represented by that may help someone who's questioning? Boy, do I got some books. So, I'm gonna start with fiction. Oh my god, I'm going to talk. This video is going to be 100 years long. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to make a short video. Y'all know. I'm going to talk about fiction first, and then nonfiction. Some of the fiction, y'all are expecting. I Wish Well Best by Mason Deaver. This didn't help me, like, figure my shit out because I was non-binary when I read it. But you want to talk about, like, being seen? This was the second fiction book that I'd read with a non-binary character. The first one was good, but I had, there were some, like, holes where, like, you could tell that is that person who wrote that. And as far as I know, the other book that I'm thinking of was the dude who said he was cishet. But this was the first book by a non-binary person with a non-binary main character. And it was, like, extra validating that the name that I was trying out at the time was Ben. So, like, reading certain passages, I was like, they're talking to me. And it was, like, a happy thing. But one of the big things, and I'm going to read a passage afterwards because I actually have a couple of sections in some of these books that really resonated with me. So you can stick around to the end if you want that. But, yeah, this is a really big one in terms of, like, being non-binary and seeing that representation that I felt pretty seen in. There was that question earlier about, like, identifying with queer men even though you're not a queer man. The next book that I have to talk about is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. Ari. I saw pieces of myself in Ari that were hard to see. The primary difference between the two of us, obviously, like, there are a lot of things in here, like his brother being in jail and stuff like that I've not experienced. Like, that's not the stuff I'm talking about, but I'm talking about his personality and the situation, falling in love and also not realizing it. But a lot of core pieces of his personality I really resonated with. The main real difference was he tended to fall a lot to anger. I tend to fall a lot to, like, guilt. And, like, I internalize my anger and he externalizes it. Oof. Anyways, but him battling, well, that sounds so dramatic, but him battling with his sexuality and, like, it wasn't, like, super obvious, like, he wasn't, I don't think that it was very heavy-handed, but my experience wasn't usually that heavy-handed. Like, I do have specific times in my life, like the one that I mentioned, where I was like, oh, you can't think that you're gay, but most of them were largely unconscious. Like, after that, like, my automatic response for pushing that shit down, and I saw that in him, and the way that he falls in love with Dante in such, like, a subtle way. Like, I know I've seen some people complain about the book, saying that, like, it seemed random, or, like, they didn't, like, get it, but I'm not about to cry on camera about Ari and Dante again. Just fucking same. Being gay and too stupid to see it. And just, god damn. This is the experience of being dumb and gay. Kind of less intensely. I also have Annie on My Mind, which, again, the kind of falling in love softly, I really resonated with too. There was a lot of this book that wasn't, like, exact, certainly, especially because, like, the time or whatever. Great, this is set in the 80s, and this is probably set in, like, the 60s, so, like, neither of them were in the time that I was in, but Annie on My Mind had a lot more details, I think, that dated it. Not that that's bad, but I also still think that the kind of softness, and certain aspects of the relationship, I kind of saw parts of myself in, not to the same extent as Ari and Dante, but it's still a notable one. Then, we have Felix Ever After by Case and Calendar. The reason that I like to say that this is one of the only love triangles that deserves rights is because of the themes in it. And, like, the theme that I saw in relation to the love triangle was him, like, learning not to be all perks of being a wallflower, but learning to accept the love that he actually deserves. And that really resonated with me, and, like, a certain piece of figuring out who I was attracted to. And I know that that's not the same thing that he's going through in this book, but it was still very similar to that experience for me. And I can't really elaborate without going into, like, personal specifics, but that part of me, like, I was literally sobbing in my car listening to that. So, those are the books. These next ones are also books. Those are the fiction books. Now I've got a couple of nonfictions. Now, these nonfictions are a perfect place to start. Like, the questions about, like if you're questioning, or if you want to understand shit about gender, these are the books. So, first of all, this one is good for sexuality and gender. ABCs of LGBT. This is by Ash Hardell, who I've already mentioned, who has a YouTube channel with a fair amount of this information in it. It is under their dead name. Their last name that they used to have before they got married was Mardell with an M. They combined their names when they got married because it's so fucking cute. I can't stand it. But yeah, so if you want to look up that, it's Mardell, ABCs of LGBT. And this is such a cool book for multiple reasons. But one of them is this was kind of made with the community. There are pieces in here from folks with different identities. So, like, they'll define a lot of these identities, and then they'll have a piece by somebody who is that identity. And that was super cool. But one of the things that I really, really loved is this chapter on fucking spectrums. Honestly, I am so hype about it. Where the fuck is the first page, though? In this talks about so many different ways to conceptualize your gender and sexuality. Like, obviously you have, like, your standard, right? But you can kind of, play with it, kind of add different things. Or you can make yourself a fucking circle. Or you can, like, really fuck it up with a circle. Or you can make a fucking galaxy. It's so cool. I am a little bit obsessed with the different ways that people can conceptualize their gender and sexuality with these things. And of course, none of these spectrums are going to be perfect. None of these outlines are going to be perfect for everyone, but none of the language is perfect for everyone because not everyone has the same experience. And it is just so fucking cool to see the diversity of the human experience. And also be able to, like, see where I fit in with certain stuff. Or see, like, maybe that's not a framework that works for me. And that's cool, too. I'm just obsessed. So, yeah. ABCs of LGBT by Ash Hardell. There are sections about sexuality and gender. Yeah. Now, looking specifically at gender, this book is excellent. You and Your Gender Identity, A Guide to Discovery, by Dara Hoffman Fox. This is a book about going through and questioning your gender. It kind of walks you through different things about it, and it also walks you through different tools for resilience while you're working through a lot of this stuff. This is by a non-binary gender therapist who also has a YouTube channel and has been reading chapters of this. I have not checked their channel recently, so I don't know where they're at with it or if they're still doing that. But there are at least several chapters online of them reading this. Now, I cannot recommend this enough. If you are confident in your trans identity, I think this can be, just a tool to further understand yourself. If you're questioning, this is a great resource. Even if you're, like, cis and you just don't understand why people are, like, questioning that stuff, read this and you'll understand what people are having to, like, go through. Highly, highly recommend both of these. I have a couple of other recommendations that are really good, that are nonfiction. So, Sorted by Jackson Bird, I have talked about so many times because it's great. There are certain parts of his experience that I did feel. His experience isn't necessarily that of like, well, I just came out of the womb and I knew I was a man, like that sort of a thing. He actually talks about like the back and forth that he dealt with coming out. So it's not something that's like straight linear, and I think like some of the details kind of resonated with me. It wasn't like, perfect like by any means because I'm not a trans man, but this is a really good place, especially for allies to start, because on top of like his, story being in here, he also has these asides that kind of explain certain things in detail a little bit. If you listen to the audiobook, these are not put into the audiobook. I think it gives you like a document to the side to look at with these in there, just as a warning. But this is excellent. Then the final book that I have is A Year Without a Name by Cyrus Dunham. Again, obviously it's not going to be like one-on-one, but this is the first memoir by a non-binary person that I've read, and there were pieces in this that really resonated with me. I also read this while I was trying to figure out some name shit. I wanted to read a passage from I Wish You All the Best. I also wanted to read a passage from A Year Without a Name, because both of these have things that really resonated with me, and both of them have to do with dysphoria, which I have thus far not talked a ton about, because I don't really know where it fits into this video, and I don't know how much I want to talk about it, and also I'm figuring things out, and as, I talked about dissociation being a huge thing, when I am able to find things that ground me in who I am, it's great, but it also peels back an extra layer, so that I can see everything that's actually making me uncomfortable. So I have not unpacked what all is gender dysphoria, y'all. But I'm gonna read a couple passages because we're talking about that shit here. So, I Wish You All the Best, page 169. This is a scene where Ben is trying on clothes at a store. It says, "The more I stare at my body, the more I hate it. It's the same feeling I had before I realized I'm non-binary. Things just aren't where they're supposed to be, and I feel like I'm larger and smaller than myself at the same time. Like nothing adds up." It's small, and it's really simple, but it made me cry. Like, I had never seen anyone articulate dysphoria like that before, because it's always... we get to hear stuff from, like, binary people where it's like, oh, well, I wanted to look like a man, or I wanted to look like a woman, I wanted to look feminine, I wanted to look masculine, but that is more my experience with dysphoria, like, when I'm actually, like, cognizant. It's not that there's something specific that needs to be one way or another, it's that it just does not make any fucking sense. And that's something that I felt before I even really knew, like, much about gender at all, and certainly hadn't reflected on it myself. Like I said, I had fucking panic attacks trying to get dressed because I didn't understand. So actually seeing somebody else say that was very affirming, I guess. Made me feel less weird. And then the other thing that I have is A Year Without a Name by Cyrus Dunham. I'm going to be reading a couple of pieces from pages 54 and 55. And, this section is largely about gender dysphoria, but there are pieces of it that I also feel are relevant to being closeted in other ways too, like closeted in terms of sexuality. But I'll just read them and hopefully you'll get it. "I said whatever I thought people wanted to hear. I'll be there at 7 p.m. sharp. Yes, Saturday works. No, I love you and only you. I'm certain I desire no one else. I'm hungry. I'm not hungry. I miss you. I need you. I want to come. I'm coming. I just came. I'm sorry. I'm not angry with you, and I don't resent you. I couldn't lie to you. I didn't lie. I didn't lie. I didn't lie. I didn't lie about lying. Calling something a lie implies that one has the truth in one's mouth and swallows it. What if one can only speak, only think what one suspects another person wants to hear? Then where is the truth? How does one learn to think it? The more I suspected people thought I was a liar, the more impossible it seemed to tell the truth. There were so many truths, I didn't know how to locate one. Lying was ebbed in every gesture, every statement, every interaction, every time I affirmed the presumption that I was female, which was constantly. I resigned myself to being incapable of not lying. To do otherwise would require being a new person entirely, one who had not fashioned herself, around hiding. Further down, page 55. I couldn't interact with anyone or anything without absorbing their feelings, or, more accurately, what I perceived to be their feelings. A hybrid sponge snail, I sucked it all up and then lost my course. I wanted harder skin, better boundaries, interconnectedness without losing myself. I hated my body even though I could hardly feel it. I hesitate to call the exhausting day-to-day of embodiment dysphoria, that catch-all for the pain of having a body that doesn't align with one's sense of self. What was the sense of self, after all? A delusion? Mental illness? I struggled to believe my own discomfort. I just felt crazy. And if I admitted to myself I was dysphoric, I'd have to deal with the fallout. I'd have to decide whether to do something about it. I haven't read that passage in so long. Like, I didn't reread it before this. And, like, damn. Like, oh my god. The section about lying. I'm embarrassed at how much of my life I can see in that. And most of it can be traced back to being closeted to myself at such an early age. So, that's cool. That's super cool. So, that is the video. This is gonna be an unruly length, so if you've watched till the end, like, go get yourself something nice. Have a nice snack. Tell me what your nice snack is in the comments if you've gotten this far. If you have comments or questions, feel free to put them in the comments too, as long as they're respectful. If you've gotten this far, I would assume you're probably the type of person to make a respectful comment, so me saying that I'm not afraid to delete shit is probably useless here. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching this far, and I'll see you in the next one, and it'll actually be about books. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye.